All right, let's talk about one of the most common and, frankly, one of the most critical arrhythmias you are going to face in the ER, atrial fibrillation. For any junior doctor, mastering this is absolutely non-negotiable. So stick with me, and I promise, by the end of this, you'll have a super clear, confident plan for your next shift. So picture this, right? The triage nurse hands you a chart. Chief complaint? Palpitations. You walk into the room and the patient looks anxious. Their heart is just pounding out of their chest, and their vitals, they're all over the place. This is it. This is where you step in. Okay, first things first. How is this patient actually going to look when they show up? Let's break down the classic presentation. Your patient might tell you their heart feels like it's fluttering or just racing out of control. They could feel dizzy, super lightheaded, or maybe they even passed out completely. Sometimes it shows up as shortness of breath or even chest pain, which can really look like a heart attack. And here's the tricky part. Some patients feel absolutely nothing at all. The AFib is just found by accident. But here is your first huge clue. Even before you get an ECG, just feel their radial pulse. It's not going to be steady. It'll feel completely chaotic, with no discernible pattern at all. That physical finding, that irregular pulse, should immediately scream atrial fibrillation in your head. So, that physical sign is your number one clue. But you need confirmation, and you need it fast. And that confirmation, of course, comes from the 12-lead ECG. Let's break down what you're actually seeing on this strip here. First, just look at the distance between those tall peaks, the RR intervals. See how they're all different lengths? That's your irregular rhythm. Second, try to find the little P waves that should be right before each peak. They're gone, right? Replaced by this messy, chaotic baseline. And finally, the rate is obviously fast, well over 100. That combo is the textbook definition of atrial fibrillation with a rapid ventricular response, or AFib with RVR. Okay, you've nailed the diagnosis. Now comes the single most important question that's going to dictate everything you do next. Look at your patient, look at their vitals, and you have to ask, are they hemodynamically stable or unstable? Because the answer to that one question sends you down two totally different pathways. Let's tackle this scariest scenario first, the unstable patient. When you see this, you have to move, and you have to move fast. So what does unstable actually mean? You're looking for these red flags. Is their blood pressure in the toilet like 80/50? Are they clutching their chest, telling you they have crushing pain? Can you hear crackles in their lungs, signaling acute heart failure? Or are they confused, maybe not making any sense? Any one of these means your patient is unstable, and you're playing a whole different ballgame. For the unstable patient, the answer is simple: electricity. You are going to do an immediate synchronized cardioversion. Now remember, this is a painful procedure, so your first step is always sedation. Once they're sedated, you put the pads on, and this is absolutely critical. You press the sync button on the monitor. That prevents a much more dangerous arrhythmia. Then deliver 100 to 200 joule shock. If it doesn't work, don't waste time, escalate the energy on the next trial. This quote really drives home the most important point. Normally, we'd be worried about blood clots before shocking somebody, but as the source material makes crystal clear, in an unstable patient, you just don't have that luxury. The immediate risk of them dying from the arrhythmia is way higher than the potential risk of a stroke. This is a life-threatening emergency, so you shock first and you worry about the clots later. Okay, let's just take a breath. Fortunately, most of the AFib patients you see are going to be hemodynamically stable. And for them, our approach is much less dramatic, but it's just as important. With a stable patient, our goal changes completely. We're not reaching for the defibrillator paddles. Our number one priority is just to control that dangerously fast heart rate. A heart beating at 150 beats a minute for hours and hours will eventually start to fail. Our job is to put on the brakes and slow it down. So our main tools for this are IV medications. You've basically got two main choices: beta blockers like metoprolol and calcium channel blockers like diltiazem. Both are great options, but here's a little clinical pearl for you. IV diltiazem is incredibly fast. It can often bring that heart rate down within just a few minutes. For that reason alone, it's a go-to for a lot of ER docs. So how do you choose between them? Well, it really comes down to your patient's other medical problems. If they have a history of ischemic heart disease, maybe a prior heart attack, a beta blocker is generally the preferred choice. But, and this is a big one, you have to avoid calcium channel blockers in patients with severe heart failure because they can actually make the heart's pumping function worse. Okay, so the patient's rate is under control, the immediate danger has passed. Now our focus has to shift to the biggest long-term threat of AFib, and that's preventing a stroke. See, in atrial fibrillation, the atria don't really contract properly. They just kind of quiver. This lets blood pool and stagnate, which can form clots, and those clots can travel up to the brain and cause a totally devastating stroke. Our job is to figure out that risk and decide if they need anticoagulation, blood thinners. Now, we don't just guess this risk, we calculate it using what's called the CHA2DS2 VASC score. It sounds complicated, but it's just a simple point system based on factors you can see here. Things like heart failure, hypertension, and age. The key takeaway is really simple. A score of 2 or more generally means that patient needs to be on a blood thinner to prevent a stroke. But wait, it's not quite that simple. Blood thinners, of course, have their own risk, major bleeding. So to weigh this, we use another tool, the has-bled score. This helps us estimate the patient's risk of a serious bleed. It's always a balancing act, preventing a clot versus causing a bleed. And using both of these scores helps you have a really informed discussion with your patient about what's best for them.
All right, I know that was a lot of information, so let's boil it all down into a high-yield summary, a little pocket card you can use on your next shift.
Let's put it all together one last time. First, you diagnose it with that classic irregularly irregular pulse and the ECG findings. Then, you ask the critical question, stable or unstable. If they're unstable, you sedate and you shock immediately. If they're stable, you control the rate with IV beta blockers or calcium channel blockers. And finally, before they leave the ER, you have to assess their long-term stroke risk using the CHA2DS2 VASC scores and has-bled scores to make that decision about anticoagulation. And there you have it. That is your core framework for managing atrial fibrillation in the ER. It's a super common presentation, but if you just follow this structured approach, diagnose, ask stable or unstable, and then treat, you can handle it safely and effectively every single time. You've got this.